Hello and welcome to episode 193 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your host, Drogan1701, and with me is my fully armed and operational team, Greendragoon, DuncanIdaho, and Markhawkman.
Wait, hang on, I'm only 98% armed. Nope. There it goes. Okay, now
I'm armed with a spoon.
I don't know, it looks
No
like
one
you guys
will
have all your
expect
arms.
a spoon.
I see you with that spoon. I do not want to mess with you.
Who needs weapons when you can rip your enemies apart with your bare hands?
I
Isn't-
am the
isn't that the
melon baller of justice.
Isn't that the Tick's battle cry? Spoon!
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know, that's like a cartoon I saw about 1,000 years ago.
I haven't seen the cartoon version in a while.
They made a new show on Amazon, I think.
Yeah, I watched that one, and I just want to note for the record, like, this might be a new record for how quickly we've gone off topic.
Oh, always ever upwards.
No, I'm sure it's happened faster before.
It's a close contender. I mean, what was that, like 3 sentences?
Pretty close.
I'm pretty sure we've gotten it down to 2 in the past.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
So getting back on topic, actually, we're going to go and show off a Foundry map here. So why don't we zone in while we're getting off topic?
Whoosh. Through the black hole.
So yeah, I think the funny thing that we maybe forgot to mention on our previous stream right after Victory's Life launch is how there was no downtime for the Foundry.
Oh, yeah. So,
I thought we
Yay
mentioned
for
it.
pre-patching.
Not that any of us have been actually in the Foundry because, obviously expansion
Wait.
launch.
well,
Except because
I mean, I
you're
was
you.
back in the Foundry. Well, I was taking a break from the Foundry for a little while, but I mean, I got back into it relatively quickly, just at least to test things around. This map is basically, it mostly came together over the last few days. I had some bits built previously, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm back to working pretty quickly on this stuff now.
And here we are. So
Dun,
tell
dun,
us,
dun, dun,
what is
dun,
this map?
This is a Lethean Citadel that is basically acting as a garrison on another alien's homeworld.
Interesting.
I see this guy named an Inaro guard.
Yep. So what this is basically is sort of a first contact gone bad. You'll notice that some of the NPCs are walking around. I just haven't set their AI behavior yet. But yeah, the situation is that like over a generation ago, first contact was made between the Inaro. I might rename them the Invaro, depending on how I like the phonetics, but the Inaro for now, between them and the Ferengi. Then came first contact with a bunch of other people. So that situation is basically destabilized in the extreme to the extent that the Inaro have basically lost their homeworld. Factions have been fighting over resources for the last generation, and they're basically hanging on by doing miscellaneous things with the Letheans and other powers. So they're sort of been completely sidelined, and the player, as a KDF captain, is coming in basically to moderate an armistice signing between the True Way, the Brain, and the Letheans over this planet. So it's almost like a Nimbus project, but with completely different factions and in completely different contexts and a very different outlook for peace, because everyone getting along might not be so good for the locals. So that's kind of the gist of the mission, and it kind of takes off from there.
Yeah, like everyone you named there is like, bad guys.
Now, when you mentioned the True Way, do you mean the rogue faction or the legitimate Cardassian Covenant?
No, rogue faction.
I just have a hard time seeing them make peace with anyone.
Well, it's basically they're just signing off on a ceasefire agreement to start exploiting the resources here. And it's basically like, okay, we'll stop shooting each other because, we've got bigger fish to fry for whatever their reasons are. So the True Way is basically saying, okay, we're not going to keep attacking you guys on this planet. And in exchange, we're just all start pulling out resources. Now, There's going to be larger complications with that. But because the players involved are basically, they're all somewhat nefarious, they don't care. the Breen aren't going to care, and the Letheans aren't caring. So while we have an interest and the Cardassians have an interest, we're sort of on the sidelines. So this thing is happening. We don't necessarily agree with it, but it's sort of like on principle, it's better than just full scale warfare again, which existed at a certain point.
So what exactly is the motivation of the First Federation for being involved in this affair?
Comedy. Also, they're observers. So it's basically just a miscellaneous diplomatic observer. How like the Romulan Republic or the Klingons or the Dominion are coming into this. And
I see that Melanie Deanne sent a few of her ambassadors to negotiate.
Yep. So the Orion Syndicate also observers. So everyone's basically just watching. Everyone just signed this thing, so they can just get on with business as usual here. So the idea is that this is just going to be a planet in development, and yeah, not a whole lot much else. So the much else does come in through the mission. It's just this is the setup. So the player arrives. There's been a little bit of a brouhaha in orbit involving some Nausicaans. And you basically just start orienting yourself. And broadly stated, this is a reboot of SSF. So I'm doing new takes on those old characters and potentially continuing this as a KDF exclusive series.
So who are the Unamka?
Unamka? Refugees. So that's basically they're from the Gamma Quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
So because there isn't a whole lot of centralized authority on the Inara homeworld, refugees can just pile in. So it's an additional dynamic for this planet, an additional force sidelining the Inaro.
I like the carpet patterns.
Yeah, I spent some time on those.
Yeah, that is an impressive geometric tiling arrangement.
So so anyway though, this architecture is meant to be predominantly Lethean. A little bit of like just using local resources as well, but yeah, that's kind of the main vibe I've been trying to go for with this one. So a lot of flanges,
another thing that's cool is how in this one
shapes.
room you have the carpet broken up with bits of stone. That looks really nice.
Yeah, the next big room. But yeah, this is sort of like the main reception area. You meet the basically Jigoro 2.0, and then you come in here, which is essentially the office of the director who is running this place. So now you got a big sense of scale, sense of vertical height, to really contrast with how the other sections are much more claustrophobic. So kind of setting a little bit of a setup for who this character is.
Someone with a ridiculous sized office.
Yeah,
it's one of those things that like feels like almost like a royal.
Yeah, he's got.
Yeah, so why do they have this much space? Because he can.
Essentially, and I mean, he could be using this space for minor diplomatic functions, basically to do whatever.
That's what I was kidding. It feels like the sort of thing you'd have like ceremonial processions in.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically how he rolls. He's got a very firm grip on this planet.
Is this an exterior courtyard or is there like a glass ceiling?
For what? Oh, theoretically there'd be a glass ceiling there or force fields, but I ran out of assets and it didn't. Put something up there.
I was going to ask what you're going to do with the outside, but now you've answered my question.
Yeah, asset limit.
Not a fit.
It's one of those sci-fi invisible glass things. Got it.
Yeah, I did use glass though for the for out here, just as an easy way of lopping everything off.
And of course, keeping the player from falling off the map.
Yeah, there are some angles though where you can see the 5-foot texture barrier because I wasn't able to do my usual trick of putting down something to basically cover that all up because I ran out of assets and I don't really want to like a lot of this. It's pretty self-enclosed and the 5-foot thing doesn't hit this map particularly hard when you're just using the mini map. So I figured this time I'd let that one slide.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the mission basically, you being down here, this is your first meet and greet and orientation to the main cast, which is a local who's acting as an adjutant for the director. That's basically Jigaro 2.0. You have a Republic ship with a couple of officers who will be tagging along with the mission, and a Cardassian as well, who's basically Ross 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really
It
doing
is kind
some
of
pretty hefty changes there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just sort of like the mission I'd create now in a similar vein. And to get that concept to work with all the different factors, change the location, it does require a change of the basics for who these characters are. Because I wasn't going to slap down just basically the entire, like the cast as is, because then it makes it a very different mission, very different angles, and there's a lot less I could do with that.
And
Because now I'd be trying to work in a Federation perspective, and it's like, you know what, that's kind of predictable for this type of scenario. You sort
That's
of
another
you
thing
know
that-
how the
I was gonna say that's another thing should be pointed out. This is targeted to Klingons, whereas SSF was Federation.
Yeah. So using a Republic crew gives me a lot more leeway because I don't have to give the same like speeches, the same basically have the same sort of plot development because the Federation would be objecting a lot to the situation, but everyone else is going to be a little bit more pragmatic about it and a lot less principle. So yeah, that's basically just the end of the mission.
Okay, so this Ferengi guy.
Yeah, that's not mission dialogue.
Spoilers?
That no, it's just how I chose to end the project. So
Oh,
you need an
yeah,
objective to be able to publish it.
Yeah, don't talk to the Ferengi. Or yeah, so now we got a pop up. The pop up is actually not supposed to be there. So yeah, just close that out immediately. But yeah, so anyway though, that's the this is the entirety of the map. So you've got this sort of information area with that centerpiece. You've got the main foyer. You've got a transporter area, and
Pretty
then
for
you've
a
all.
war-torn planet.
Well, this is the Lethean Citadel. Let's put it that way. So yeah, the outside probably doesn't look as good, but I'm sort of going more for just like a hard grind over time rather than just basically since it's been over a generation, there's basically not a whole lot outside except more or less a pretty simplified ecological wasteland and a few scattered settlements. And then there's the mining operations, and those are what have been hit hard. The NRO haven't really been targeted. And they participated like originally in some fighting, but they basically got snowballed. And then everyone just started fighting with each other over what's stated to be dilithium.
So one question that pops into my mind is, what is the significance of the nomenclature for the name Ermoth 1-3?
Basically, the NRO practiced an extreme extreme biological caste system where individuals were highly modified to perform specific tasks. The numbers denote specific roles. I haven't decided what 1-3 means, but 5-6 was an analytical type. And even though that caste system has gone away, the names have stuck around through families, since now the NRO are having to resort to old-fashioned biological methods to sustain their species. So this is basically
the woman who mentioned Ermoth 1-3 seemed to suggest that he was the sort of person who would procure food for visiting dignitaries.
Well, basically, you have these attendants, and they're basically just working with people. But keep in mind, this is the next generation on from the last members of that caste system. So these are these are all second generation who haven't actually been performing those roles for that society. And this is the Letheans, too, not the Inaro.
I'm just looking at a lot of the decorative detail you have, especially over the door arches, basically.
Oh, yeah.
I see
quite
you
cool
chose one of my favorite column types for climbing things that aren't meant to be climbable.
Yep. And yeah, I also like one thing to sort of point out is that I used some recessed recessed floor lights just to kind of give some of these things a little bit more definition. When there's a bunch of shapes together, the lighting's pretty flat. If you want that to stand out, use either recessed ceiling or floor lights really close to it, because then you'll start to see a lot more. So it plays around with the shapes and is a really nice way of just letting that detail stand out. So it's
what are
basically
these upright things you used for this kiosk?
shelf holder thingies. So yeah, it's basically just pieces of shelving unit for the science category, and yeah, I just set them down a little bit and just brought some recessed ceiling lights down to, or the hanging ceiling lights down to sort of fit within those niches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Cool.
How long did it take you to line that up?
Not that long. I got it pretty close on the first attempt, and then it just came down to I had to resync the shelving units down a little bit. So that was pretty fortuitous.
And what is this over here? Underneath the
It's a building.
wall console?
Yeah, that's a military.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's a military building.
It's just the very edge of one with the door.
Yeah, so, and that's just a great way of just adding in more door types when you don't mean them to be useful, because you have to do a lot less building around them, because you don't have to build a frame, you don't have to worry about the top of it. It's just, nope, I'm just going to slap that there.
Well, it's like I mentioned, one of the older shows is that adding sealed doorways is a great way to make a map feel larger, even without actually making it larger.
Yeah, and especially here too, when it's just like there's 3 rooms and then the big hallway here. Those little tricks do help a lot to make this feel like a larger complex rather than just a small map with
and logically this would be like like one hallway in a huge complex of stuff.
Yeah, and there's going to be sort of like large office or analytical spaces around here as well. So
that we'll never see in the mission, but no. Details,
but yeah,
details.
it just helps this make it feel like a much more workman style environment. And so that's the mission. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it without going into like further mission details and spoilers. But yeah, I did create the new set, like basically new team dynamic, although that might not be holding for a continuing series. But this is going to be called Legacy Alpha, and if I continue it, the next one's going to be Legacy Beta, and then Legacy Gamma, and so on. So a different way of setting up the naming scheme rather than just doing a numeral system.
So it sounds like fun.
Yep.
So,
just wanted to make one note. You see, if you look up, you've got the columns, and then the ceiling lights placed right underneath them.
That is a neat touch, because those ceiling lights you chose for that are basically just glowing buttons.
Yeah, and so
you can just stick them on anything pretty much.
The one nice thing that does, and this is why I really like this trick, is that one, they're actually at the same level, so you can basically set them to the exact same coordinate system or y coordinate.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, then, I guess that column is one of those where the XYZ coordinates are the center of the base of the column, I guess.
So, and then that matches up exactly with the ceiling light. But the other thing that does is that allows me to keep the ceiling high, but bring the lights low, so I get more ground illumination than if I put them right on top of the ceiling. And it also lets me play a lot more with that detail, like changing the ceiling up and down a little bit to show a little bit more of the walls or less of the walls, while at the same time not having to worry about the lights because they're fixed in place. And the column is high enough that it gives me a lot more flexibility. I did that for an Undine map, and I figured I'd bring this back here because it adds more detail to the ceiling, and then it lets me play around with that. And you can use the same trick with the building blocks as well, because they're set up the same way. And the they're probably a little bit best. I mean, you could try it with the platforms as well, but it's sort of, you still have to do a lot more with those guys. Otherwise, you're just basically, it's just a big flat space with one light in or a set of lights. But yeah, that's the map. And and this is the first map to be completed out of the project, and there's like 6 to go. I might recycle this one for the finale. Or basically the resolution, rather than just trying to build something new. And also,
well, I mean, if you have a story reason to come back to the same building.
Well, basically just a regroup opportunity, because it's like, well, we got to resolve everything, or basically resolve everything in a diplomatic way, sort of through details, and figure out what we're going to be doing with this planet.
So what does this Orion person do in the story?
Nothing. I mean, the Orion Syndicate's just basically there. So part of what I want to do in this basic walk-in is basically throw in some representative of a bunch of groups to give the impression that this is a conference atmosphere, and there's not a whole lot of the locals. So there's going to be a few in RO, but not too many, just to give the impression that there's a collective of species coming through. The Letheans are heavily involved, and the Inaro are, more they're background.
You know, one thing you didn't discuss that I'm not sure if this is what you intended, but I personally find it to be rather interesting, is that this archway here, it gives me like an airport metal detector vibe.
Yep,
Like,
that's it.
like you're supposed to walk through it and they scan you for illegal substances or undeclared weapons or what have you.
Yep, exactly.
Obviously, I told them that I'm carrying an Undine bioplasmic projector, so they don't care. But if
but
if I was to
since it's a bioweapon, it doesn't have any metal in it, so they couldn't detect it.
Yeah, that's the vibe I was going for, and that's why I put the cutout pieces right next to it, because it closes it off, and it does kind of give that feeling of being caged in. So it's very security heavy at this point.
Also, those zigzaggy metal columns you put there kind of like give it like a feeling that there's machinery embedded in the archway, and it's not just an archway.
Exactly.
Bloodleaf is asking what sort of costume pieces you used on the locals here.
Right now, it's a little bit of a mix of Kobali pieces with Nikul Jodhpurs. So we can actually show this off with a screenshot that I may have sent earlier. But yeah, right now with the Inaro, it's more of a sort of a ragtag mix. So their work uniform is a Kobali set with the double pants, and just kind of give it a sense of they're just wearing a simple tunic. And then the Jodhpurs to really kind of just break up the double pants with something that looked just more alien than usual. But outside of that context, it's basically, a little bit, they've got self-sufficiency, but I mean, not a whole lot else right now. So not like you basically Mad Max style, but more, Yeah,
Ragtag.
I mean, something that
Ragtag,
I don't even say it's ragtag. It's just basically depressed. I mean, they're sort of more like serfs at this point. So yeah, first on the screen was main captain one of the main characters, Captain Castus Havoc of the Republic. You've got Drek, the interesting Cardassian, Aveta, Romulan. And finally, Sabatu, who is wearing the work uniform for basically Inaro working under the director.
Kind of like that Cardassian. It's like he's the most interesting Cardassian in the world.
Kind of. I mean, it's basically Ross Cardassian, but at the same time with an unspecified role. So I didn't want to play him like Garrick, but he's ambiguous in a different way.
You could make it so that he keeps, whenever the opportunity arises, he spots the line. Is like, I don't always do this, but when I do.
I could.
I don't always drink at Quarks, but when I do, I drink Kanar.
There is actually like a specific thing I was thinking of for a Cardassian who's ambiguous is someone who's ambiguous because they do a variety of things to make a living, kind of like that guy who what was his name? Dang it, I forgot what the guy's name was. You have to hunt down because he's working for the True Way and supplying them.
And it's not ringing a bell.
No, not for me either. But yeah,
because he's one of the like major Cardassian NPCs that's an antagonist in the Cardassian story arc, or used to be.
I mean the gull that turns out to be a changeling?
I don't think so.
Okay, but
No,
yeah,
it's one of like the old Cardassian story arc NPCs.
yeah,
That
I
was a
definitely
very
thought-
long set of missions.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, he's basically just he is. Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything.
Well. The reason what I was getting at with this guy though is that he, that particular guy, while he runs a whole lot of different things, he dabbles in a variety of things. I mean, he has work crews that do mining work. He has work crews that distribute the ore that he mines. He has work crews who act as mercenaries, etc., etc.
Yeah. So yeah, not going that direction with him, and yeah, I don't want to say more about his character because spoilers.
Well, we will move on
Spoilers.
before you are forced to do any spoilers.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that they just announced this week is that the summer event is coming up next week. In fact,
Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes. Actually, simultaneously on console and PC. Which is kind of
And for those watching the recording, that'll probably be about the same day this comes out.
probably.
Yay! But yeah, it's July 3rd, so just before the 4th.
So
Or
one of
folks
the major things, and it's pretty cool that it's coming out before the 4th because I have that day off. But one of the major things that they're doing is one of the rewards for this year is baseball uniforms.
Yeah, that was. It's fitting, but unsuspecting. Like I wasn't suspecting that.
Yeah.
Because
well, I mean, Thomas did all that baseball stuff on his own time, so it's sort of surprising that I guess somebody at some point said, "Hey, let's actually make some uniforms for these." So we're getting them for the Cation Claws, the Shikar Logicians, the Niners, and the what was the other one?
Ferengi
The
Liquidators.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Ferengi Liquidators.
Yeah.
Which is
fittingly, according to my completely non-STO canon things that I put on Twitter and Reddit a few weeks ago, these are two of the best teams and two of the worst teams in the league.
Well, see, one of the amusing things that I noted about the preview pictures that they did is that the Ferengi Liquidators team is being worn by a Ferengi who has a strong resemblance to Brunt. The Niners one is being worn by a female Cardassian. Don't know exactly who she's supposed to represent, but probably not a canon character. The Cation one, well, it's a Cation. Random Cation dude.
Yep.
The Vulcan one is, of course, being worn by a female Vulcan because,
Yeah. So that got me thinking, well, I better finish that baseball stadium that I started the other day. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to work on that. I'm going to share my screen so it can be broadcast on the stream. And I'll be working on that while we talk about various different things.
Yay.
So let me share my screen.
Yeah, but I do like the just sort of changing pace with the summer event because summer is baseball season. So just
Certainly is.
opening it up to different interpretations than just the tropical festival. I mean that's pretty good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I guess where I was at in the state of my baseball stadium. Here's the 2D view. Let's give it a preview. I had the basic shape and I had made the dugouts. I think the next thing I really need to work on is a pitching mound, and I had maybe a rock that would work, but I need to find the right height for it.
So what's the name of this stadium?
I don't know. Maybe you guys can brainstorm that. I built it to be the one for the Vulcan team, for the Logicians.
Mm-hmm.
Geometric Park or something
have fun
like
with that one.
So I guess this one is somewhere on Vulcan because the geography matches what I would expect for Vulcan.
It's probably built on the Vulcan map, correct?
Yes, as you can see here. One of the things that I do sometimes if I need to get an overview, because we don't have free cam anymore, is I put a little invisible platform high up above it and put the spawn point up there so I can kind of see everything.
Let's see. I mean, a pun would be ideal, but probably not Pawn Far Field.
They only win every 7
Probably the
years.
wrong message.
Yeah. I would name it after like a Vulcan geography feature.
Or, something like Sarek Memorial Stadium or... I don't know.
Sarek Memorial Stadium or Spock Memorial Stadium, to be a little bit more timely with the...
What was the name of the ambassador from Enterprise? Saval?
Saval Stadium.
Because,
Yeah,
I mean, of Vulcans,
that'd be
he
a
was
good one.
pretty into humans.
Yeah. So
Even though he didn't really
I
show
like
it.
that.
Be the patron saint of a human baseball game.
Plus, he was like one of the first Vulcan ambassadors to Earth.
That works, I guess.
Yeah. So mainly what I need is, a the pitching man to find the right height for it, because it's supposed to be about here. And then the bleachers, the stands.
I just thought of something. There's a clump of flowers prop that it's not a flat clump of flowers. It includes a raised dome made out of dirt.
Swamp
as part of
grass.
the clump of flowers.
Yeah, that's swamp grass.
It doesn't want to select the object that I put down.
It's gonna be that's gonna be a little small. Let's see, like a good spherical dome. You could try it. Like I would try let's see. I'm in the Foundry right now, so I'm gonna look at one in the cave.
Well, see, what the one I was looking at was the New Romulus 30-inch or 30-foot rock 02.
Yeah, I mean that should do it pretty well. Let's see.
Maybe an odd color. If you got a lot of orange going on.
Let's see. I mean, Desert Cave.
Almost everything's going to be an odd color.
I mean, let's see. A platform.
Any of the platform things, I think, would be too big.
Yeah. I mean, there is that. Basically, it's this. It's from the DS9 bridge.
I know the one you're thinking of.
Yeah, that one. It kind of has the right features if you want to go for something that's like a pitching mound, but platform captain's chair.
It's sort of too technological.
Yeah,
I feel like it should be on a baseball field.
Oh yeah, like traditional baseball field. I would say like that would be like just like updated. So yeah.
But since we're revisiting our baseball fields, I thought I'd bring up mine, which I did do a little bit of more work on after we entered the show. So it's actually got like a colony around it.
You should publish it.
I don't know if I got it quite fully done. I think I got it most of the way there.
So we should figure out what team yours would go with. It'd have to be one of the
it was
colony teams.
Bloodleaf WoW asked who the team leader of the Logicians was in DS9, and it was Captain Solok of the USS Tecumseh.
So what would I think Thomas was thinking is that these are teams, and some of them were sort of based on that. Like it all sort of started there. But these teams aren't really, like the Niners doesn't include any of the canon characters from Deep Space Nine anymore, obviously.
All right.
Well, I mean, they're Vulcans, and it's only about 30 years later, so maybe one or two of them, but not necessarily.
Yeah, you never know. They could have a couple.
Drogan, I got something for you. Highland Rock L01. You're going to have to sink that down a lot to get it to the right size, because it's going to look large, but I think if you get the height just right, you can basically, make it appropriate to the size of the stadium. It's going to look a little Yeah, a little uneven.
It looks like Gone 2.
Yeah, basically. You've
There's
got
something I'd love to
glowing
see
in the
on
middle of the
game.
field.
We're gonna have to play with
holy-
the Y.
Yeah, Greendragoon, you should publish that and submit it to Kale as a spotlight, as an RP map.
Wait, my baseball map?
Yeah, because Cryptic's releasing the baseball
You might
field.
actually go for that.
We should do these at the same time. Pair 'em up.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I mean,
And even if it wasn't Spotlight, if you wanted to, just stick it in a little blog and stick it out there,
something
get a
like
little
that.
publicity,
Because, I
say,
I was
"Hey,
just
check
looking at
these
that
out."
map, and that was like, holy crap.
It's not done.
Well, I mean, still, what you had there was still darn good, especially just for the feel of it. But yeah, Gom2 Rock there, it's like, I just
Can't actually see. It's not poking through, so I can't actually see if I got it anywhere close. No, I did not.
Oh yeah, Bloodleaf Law was asking because he was suggesting that we name the stadium after Captain Solak.
Solak Stadium?
Mm-hmm.
Solak Field.
Yeah,
I feel like being Vulcan, it should be like it should be something elaborate, like the Solak Memorial Institute for the Study of baseball or something like that.
Well,
For the
Vulcans
study of
only do
organized
long
sporting
names if the long name has a meaning. If it's just,
well, I mean,
usually
it's the home of intercultural studies. I mean, like that.
Solak Intercultural Sports Arena.
Really unsure of the Y values of this thing.
Well, trial and error.
Yes, exactly. That is what we do.
Welcome to
here.
the Foundry.
In the meantime, here, let me look up my listing of the teams, and you can decide. Let's see here. For yours, it'd be more like like one of the far-flung colonies.
I was thinking the Cestus one.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't include Cestus in this particular.
He didn't?
No.
Question.
Wait. Actually,
which
yes,
Cestus?
because they were the Pike City Pioneers, right? That was on Cestus.
Might have been. Hang on, let me memory alpha that and double check. I think we need to take a moment to appreciate just what a wonder having access to memory alpha is.
Yeah.
Because I had to reference that pretty heavily recently when just trying to figure out, is there anything on the Letheans? Answer no.
No, not a lot.
Well,
no, like
one thing that I have mentioned several times is that, I honestly think that digital encyclopedias are probably the way things are going to go for storing information going forward, just because of how convenient they are.
Okay,
yeah,
so according to
it's
memory
just curating that's a problem.
Cestus 3 was home to an entire league of baseball teams, including the Cestus Comets and the Pike City Pioneers.
Which Cestus is this, though? Because aren't some of the Cestuses inhabited by Gorn at the moment?
No, Cestus 3 was attacked by Gorn in TOS.
Oh,
But apparently they were.
okay. This is 3, and 3 is human.
By TNG, there was a human colony on it.
Yeah, well, there was
Quite
technically
a
a human
large
colony that was wiped out in TOS. So the Gorn attack a human colony because they feel the Federation is expanding too close to their territory, and that's what happens in the what's the episode?
Yeah,
Arena.
the Gorn were like, "You have
The arena.
violated our territory. Prepare to die."
So basically, by our time, Pike City is the only team from there who has gone interstellar.
I don't feel like this is a city, though.
Let's see. Well, what are the other options for far-flung colonies? Let's see here. That's moon. There were several from that were on the moon. It could be the home of the Deneb 5 slime devils.
You know, if we had some baseball pennants in the Foundry, then I could.
I've been bugging Gale for those already.
Well, you know, I ranked the Slime Devils as number 5 in the Interstellar League, so, you know, solid mid-pack.
But I kind of feel like each baseball team's name is kind of an inside joke about the place. So
A little bit, yes. Like the Utopia Planitia work bees.
It definitely isn't Utopia Planitia, which is on Mars.
No.
Maybe a holodeck, but yeah, I mean, it would feel a lot better if it was a physical location.
Does it look at all like Montana?
Yes, actually it does.
The Bozeman Titans.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. I don't know. We don't have buildings that feel like traditional Earth very much, but yeah, it could be a passable Montana. And Bozeman's not very big.
It could be a holodeck, because it could be the holodeck for the Jupiter Station stem bolts. They don't actually have a stadium; they just play it all in the holodeck.
Well, actually, now that I think about it, that is the sort of thing that the Vulcans would do. Is that they create a holographic a stadium, and they choose an environment for the stadium that is just whatever location the person programming it happens to like.
Okay, I'm getting close on this rock here.
This is why I'm always hesitant to. I was toy with the idea of like streaming myself working on Foundry missions, and I think how boring that would be to watch.
Well, that's why you don't do it solo.
True.
Yeah.
So we got other folks to talk about. Okay, so
we should probably mention
what else
that
we
there
talk
was
about?
a new feature episode.
Yes.
Yeah, so
called Home.
I was thinking they'd push the sort of the finale back in the other episode, but yeah, we got the resolution to the Victory's Life arc.
I wasn't expecting them to release that this quickly, other than they must have had it essentially mostly done.
Yeah, because it felt like they had like the interior locations seems like it was part of a kit piece that they were working on and might be included in future content. And then the ground map was actually, it seemed like probably an easier build because it was using a lot of recycled pieces from Kobali Prime. So
I mean, you want to reuse where you can.
Oh yeah. So
well, I mean, they have been known to sit on things and not just release them as soon as they're finished being built.
Mm-hmm. So
this is true.
So yeah, so that was, again, it was just something that they put out pretty quickly, which is nice because it sort of creates this nice little rise before the summer event, and then we get to the summer event proper and can just have fun with that.
Yeah, I kind of think that was the reason why they chose that timing, is because they didn't really want to conflict with the event.
Plus, I think they may have waited to release the last episode to kind of give everyone kind of a chance to just settle in Victory's life before they wrapped it up.
Yeah, and if the episode needed a little bit more time for polish, they could have also added that as well. Although it did kind of feel, I don't know, it didn't quite hit the same quality target that the other episodes met. So I honestly want to say that the ending was pretty good, but mechanically, I kind of had more issues with this one than the others. I liked how it was ramping up on the combat, it had a lot of stuff like that, but I mean, to give a little spoiler, Wayun's bit, I did not understand.
Why is
From
Like,
what
yeah,
I've heard about
why did
that,
we go
one,
through
a
that
lot of
again?
people found that somewhat confusing.
Because it's like he does the exact same thing. Rex has the same conflict, and it ends in the same way, just slightly more severe. So I'm just it kind of feels like maybe this was part of, like, they had planned things a little bit differently, but then released the episodes and didn't feel that having this sort of repeat twice was that big of a problem. Maybe because they had some stuff finished. I don't know. The writing did not seem to sync up on this one for that part. The rest, I think, worked. But why Wayun was necessary to bring in again to shoot a backpack, which the Herc could have done. Because that's functionally all he does in the episode. He shoots a backpack. But
I think they wanted to bring some closure to Wayun.
But putting him in prison was also closure as well. I mean,
Not really. Because I mean, there was the ramping tension there, but there wasn't any release with Wayun's arc. They built it up.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, I don't know, especially with like how Rex reacts to the situation and how Wayun gives him an order that he should know at this point Rex isn't going to follow. I don't know. That just felt, it felt out of place. And yeah, I mean, giving Wayun that type of closure, there was no intention of maybe revisiting the character at any later point. Yeah, sort of resolves that, of course, though. They can always bring back another clone.
I didn't feel like particularly Wayun was a necessary character for the entire story.
Yeah, I mean, I liked his.
I mean,
I
it's
liked it
always
the
fun
first
to
time
have a
around.
Canik character there and everything, but
Where it became
I
this
don't know.
conflict. I thought it was going to become more of a civil war between the two sides of the founders.
Yeah, and that
I thought maybe too.
And that just sort of ended. And they had that reference like, oh, how did you get here? Well, not everyone, it feels the same way. It's like, hey, that's interesting. But I mean, it's hard to see how that's going to be brought in. There's definitely going to be something, though, because of what they said at the end about how the Jem'Hadar are going to be treated. So I think the player is going to be offered a choice in the future.
Well, I think it was mostly thrown in there to kind of give your player character a reason why they can, like, not or going without white doesn't result in them going insane.
And why they can act the way they do.
Well, it still has
much more
drawbacks.
independently than your usual Jem'Hadar.
Yeah. The white still has drawbacks, though, because if you don't take it, you still get lethargic, just as you did at the beginning of the arc when the Jem'Hadar were given or nominally given more independence.
It's just that you don't die.
We didn't die
around
before,
you.
though.
The player character didn't, for gameplay reasons, I suppose you could say.
So anyway, though, it's one of those things where they're throwing a lot of resolution in there, and I think at the end, it's, once you get past Wayun, I think the mission picks back up again, and I did like the ending, because you do that sort of Siege of AR 558 style stand, and it doesn't elevate the player character as some sort of basically you're slightly undignified, so it sort of humanizes the character a little bit. More than we've seen in previous episodes, because it's like we've seen how we can kind of fail, but or basically not turn the entire battle around just because we are the player character.
Yeah, it feels like your loss is likely, and you're not just
Yeah.
Because I know in the Iconian War, it kind of felt a bit like that, where it's like, well, yeah, if you just let me fight them, I'll wipe them out.
Yeah.
Actually, back when the original 4800 series was released, after that, the first featured episode was put out. I was in a discussion with a bunch of people in Zone Chat about, okay, how many people are there parked in sector space right now? How many Jem'Hadar ships do you think each of us could take out before getting overwhelmed by sheer numbers? And the basic conclusion is that there was probably enough player characters that if you were to pool all of them together into an armada, they could probably take out the entire 4800 by themselves.
Yeah, so then you just sort of have to give the game a little bit of a suspension of disbelief and like, yep, it's a MMO, and
the way I always look at it is, the things that are in the story missions, this is what is happening. This is what is canon as far as STO is concerned. Everybody else's player characters are not.
Yeah.
Well,
you just imagine that they're
gameplay and story segregation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's a fundamental conceit of MMOs in general.
Yeah. So I think the thing to note for how things are going to be moving forward is not the A plot, but the B plot, and how certain references became a lot less subtle, in not necessarily a bad way, but a definitely their foreshadowing way, or very, very likely their foreshadowing.
Or at least they're just being very direct about their references
and making it clear that
and touchstoning.
I'm a little disappointed they didn't go with our Klingon Civil War theory.
We haven't gotten there yet, but I mean, it's a possibility for the next expansion.
Jim didn't sound all that happy about Martok.
Yeah, but he's like, I'm glad he doesn't have any political aspirations.
Oh yeah, that was just like, oh god dang it. But I mean, there's always
there's the fact that there's a third party that that Jim Pock has been keeping a close eye on for the entire time he's been Chancellor. So he doesn't want to weaken his own position because he knows that if it does actually become an active power struggle between him and Martok, that third and maybe fourth and fifth parties will get involved, and then it goes from being a one-on-one contest to kind of like a free-for-all.
I was realizing it was sort of funny that you guys had said when we were talking about this potential, Klingon Civil War theory last time, that you guys thought that we'd actually probably support Jim Pock, and I've been playing KDF character on console and playing through every single story mission because it was a Gamer Recruit. And I was like, you know what? You're probably right, because our player character's been working for Jim Pock this whole time. We only just recently met Martok.
Yeah, and
it's like battles. I said in one of the early missions, Jim Pock basically says, "Hey, well, welcome to my team."
Yeah, Worf is kind of like, he would support Martok, but I don't know if they'll get Michael Dorn to voice his character again, because there's some talk that he might not be willing to do that for Star Trek Online. I mean, that's always just scuttlebutt from around the internet.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I wouldn't put too much stock in that.
I haven't heard that, but
yeah. So at any rate, though, it's well, it's kind of like there was a rumor that I saw posted that he wasn't happy with how Worf turned out, what his role was, but I have no idea what the context of that or the validity or
the
what
fact
the
that they keep using him versus kind of pushing him towards the back makes me think that may not be the case.
Yeah, and especially if they go for.
Well, one thing that does seem to have at least some validity is that Denise Crosby put conditions on her being Sela in that she wasn't going to be a mustache twirling villain.
Mm-hmm.
And the character is better for it.
At least not with Drew.
Well, I know she's been pretty happy over the years with Star Trek Online.
Oh yeah, and yeah, she like
I mean, to the point of being like actual friends with devs and continuing friendships and that sort of thing. So,
oh yeah. So the yeah.
when I went and got her autograph, I mentioned that I was a STO player, and she's smiled real big, said, "Oh, that's fantastic."
Yeah. So the but yeah, just to sort of specify the plot point is that the Martoks become Emperor. Morph was the torchbearer, and yeah, they reference.
I thought that was a fun reference.
Oh yeah, and then they reference specifically Voke, Laurel, and Takuvma for a lot of what they were doing. So like, hey, we are sort of honoring their legacy, which I found funny on the forums is that people really objected to Laurel being mentioned as in a positive light. But she united the Empire. Come on.
Laurel's
in like the worst way possible.
In that story is basically it's like, okay, this is what happens when you have a Klingon who isn't a knuckle-dragging moron.
Yeah, I mean, she basically brought the great houses to heel. I mean, it's like, well, she threatened to blow up Kronos, but at the same time, that does take cojones. So, I mean, she's kind of
it
like...
absolutely does. I'm just saying, she did it in a sort of treacherous way set up by humans. So, I mean,
yeah, like you can sort of imagine that role being minimized, especially with her, her essentially her first act is like, let's just stop the stupid war.
Well, and we are like
know what
almost
house
200
Laurel is
years
from.
later, so.
They
do mention it. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, they mention it. It's on Memory Alpha.
Because I think
technically.
She said it was like a house of spies or something.
So kind of like House Peg.
Yeah, so it's basically that era equivalent of House Peg.
Do you think she may actually be from House Peg?
Well,
no. Well,
they didn't call it that.
No, they didn't call it that. But
they didn't name it that in the TV show. But the way she describes it, it sounds like the same organization.
Yeah, essentially.
And I mean,
I guess that would be a retcon of sorts, I suppose, but it fits. I suppose.
Yeah. All you have to say is basically that house. I mean, they don't keep calling the house by an ancestral. Well, they don't really, because it's like the House of Martok. Well, it's Martok, House of Jimpak, House of Jimpak, House of Duras, named after Duras. So
that is actually a very good point.
They've never been all that specific on how that works.
It's typically named after its current leader.
Yeah, so you had the House of Quark, and as one example as well, and so
Lovely Wow says that the House of Spies is named Mokai.
That's it.
Okay, that's it.
Wait, I've heard that name mentioned on the game.
Mogai.
Mokai.
Oh, Mokai?
Mokai.
Sure?
Mokai is a Romulan warbird.
Because that's what I thought you would. That's sort of the immediate phonetic connection for me. Mogai? No. But yeah, it's one of those. It's they're throwing in a lot of Discovery content now, and it's like they're probably.
I think that's about as much as we could expect. In terms of Discovery stuff,
I think the name Mokai was brought up in DS9 at some point, and that Discovery used it after DS9 did, because I seem to remember having seen the name Mokai in STO duty officer assignments before Star Trek Discovery was produced.
To Memory Alpha!
I'm already pulling it up.
Lovely Wow said it was first mentioned in Voyager.
In a holoprogram created by the Hirogen in 2374, the Klingon character of Catherine Jane was from the House of Mokai and claimed, while fighting an Alpha Hirogen, that the house would never yield. So that would be the two-part episode where the Hirogen invaded Voyager and turned it into a big hunting ground.
And it just has one of my my perversely favorite scenes of just Klingons fighting Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Well, one interesting thing with that episode, though, is that the Hirogen used information from Voyager's databanks to create their simulation. So it's entirely possible that they didn't make up the name Mokai.
Yeah, certainly. So it's it's a nice reference from the Discovery writers.
But yeah, as far as that one reference in Voyager is the only place it was mentioned outside of Discovery.
Okay.
Someone just dropped off. Did we lose Drogon? Did we lose me?
No, you're still here.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yep, it was Drogon.
Well, he's been having inclement weather, so we shall see.
I haven't heard him for several minutes, so.
Well, we only just lost his stream.
Yeah. So anyway, though, with the so that brings the resolution. We've got Discovery references. Next season, wouldn't be a bad guess to say that we might be going into some Discovery content.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to play it judiciously because it is still an active show.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure they're very much aware of that, and
Also,
probably been talking to
they have
CBS.
the ability to ask the people at CBS.
I'm pretty sure they
for,
don't get any advanced
guidance.
knowledge.
Well, yeah, but they do meetings with CBS, and Cryptic's talked about those a few times, and they do actually get some advanced stuff. They're probably not going to get full details, but they can certainly ask
just
CBS.
like vague notions, like, oh yeah, by the way, don't get attached to these guys because you won't see them later.
Yeah, so we can imagine that they can certainly ask CBS to say, is this plot detail okay? And they could get a yes/no answer.
I mean, they could certainly do stuff where it's connected to Discovery, but not necessarily specifically to what Discovery itself.
So
like they did with the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, so I think we could revisit events certainly. Oh God, they could bring back temporal Cold War stuff. Oh, I heard that.
They already did.
Well, yeah, but I've also So I mean, it's just the easiest mechanism. But yeah, I think we could just go for a revisit. Basically, we just have a lot of elements from a lot of cultural elements. So you have people objecting to the Torchbringer, using certain locations for ceremonial purposes. Say you have someone who tries to challenge Martok, like another Klingon, tries to challenge Martok's claim to Emperor by trying to do something at the binary star system. I mean, just symbolically, and that allows Cryptic to use the visual references.
Maybe that what's that ship of wasn't there like a ship that was just sitting out there?
Yeah, it was the sarcophagus, or not the sarcophagus. What's that? What was it? The egg ship.
Whatever that was called.
That
could still be out there.
Possibly. I mean, that'd be an easy call.
I created a character that was basically a crossfield class, but it was a generational ship that got lost.
Oh yeah.
So everyone is descended from the Discovery time, but they basically tried to use a incomplete spore drive and got far flung and couldn't get back home.
Yeah. I've got a similar thing going on for my main who is using the crossfield. But one thing, now here's just a bit of speculation. What if someone tries to challenge Martok using a similar method as the monks did to create the Emperor in TNG, but they create a clone of T'Kuvma?
I mean,
Maybe.
Let's face it, the concept that they went with there is actually something that realistically wouldn't work because, let's face it, centuries old DNA that wasn't carefully preserved.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Well,
in fairness, they created the first clone from a knife.
Well, that's what I was getting at, though, is that the DNA that they used to create the Kahless clone was basically a blood stain that had been left on a blade for centuries.
Yeah. Although I will say the Dune universe does that, but they did make special note that they carefully curated that knife to access genetic material. But and then you can
one thing that you could say with this one, though, you definitely left a few bars out of place there. Ugh.
Yeah, I'm noticing that when I copied it over. I think I went to adjust its position and didn't do it quite right.
Oh, did you just do a copy map?
No.
Okay. Oh, copied it over. Oh, you.
You're
I'm
talking
just
about
wondering
the fence.
Well, yeah. I'm looking at the fence. I'm just wondering. Like, I was just wondering what you meant by copy, because if you say
Oh,
had
because I
snap
copied it
grid
over
on,
from the other side,
yeah.
which in itself
Okay.
isn't perfect yet either.
Anyway,
Yeah.
though,
So if I
when
could
was-
jump in for just a second, I
Hey, you're
had
back.
a power surge or something. So now we're about to see if any of that saved.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it. It's because it's constantly communicating with the server, so
This we'll find out here in a second.
yeah, it'll just ask you to auto if you want to pull up the autosave.
Yeah, that's actually one good thing about the Foundry is that it's like rearranging your character's inventory. Is that the game updates the status of your saved character data every single time you move an object in your inventory, and it does the same thing with Foundry missions.
Yeah. So, did we have anything more to cover with the final episode?
Not too much. I mean, I don't know.
enjoyed it.
I liked it a lot, actually.
I did too.
I agree with you about Wayoon. I think he was a little bit of a useless character throughout the whole thing. But it's like you can't have Jeffrey Combs and not have Wayoon.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I would say Brunt was the
You can
superior
totally have Jeffrey Combs and not have
appearance.
Wayoon. Yeah, Thylex Shran was awesome.
well, yeah. It's just.
Well, it did make sense to have Shran. It made sense to have Brunt for sure, and he
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah, so I do like the fact that Jeffrey Wayoon is in it, and he's playing he's playing kind of a downfall arc, and this is sort of the culmination of that. So yeah, in that respect, I do like it. It's just that his final appearance here for me was just like okay, there's ways it could have been done better, but I'm certainly not down on the whole episode. It was just that bit that like basically that cutscene was for me. It was just like, oh, okay.
And then in the next episode, we have Wayoon 13 or something.
They can just clone him again.
I have a feeling he's not going to get cloned
Have
again.
they said what happened to Loris 3 yet? I
No.
really want to know that.
They were just
Yeah,
never meant to know.
I wanted her to be in like an insane asylum or something.
Well,
but,
I mean,
but the war is still on. I swear.
that one thing I mentioned in one of the previous shows is that one of the headcanon-y things I decided about that sort of thing is that under certain circumstances, the founders would be like, oh, well, we didn't really need you, but I'm sure we can find a place for you. And basically just like
Give her a desk job somewhere out of the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Mark, you could totally do a Foundry mission based on what happened to Loris 3.
The problem with that, and I did think about doing that, I really did, is because I actually used Loris in one of my missions. And the mission that I used her in, it was meant to be Loris 3. And that's the one where you go and fight the Rick Arthur guys on the backside of Dominion space. Anyways, so aside from that, the thing with this though is that I have this sneaky suspicion in the back of my mind that Cryptic wrote out a in-universe explanation for why they're calling her Loris 4, and they just haven't told us what it is yet. And I kind of don't want to write an explanation that contradicts that.
I can understand that, but I mean, I also kind of feel like the time has passed that they're not going to tell us. I think if they were going to tell us or make a deal out of it, they would have, and it's just going to be one of those mysteries. Because it's not a big enough mystery to really go make an entire episode about it. From Cryptid's perspective.
Yeah,
it's
you kind of
the thing that I just like halfway expect them to just like throw it into a random episode, you just like it as an optional dialogue or something.
I'm just having this random idea.
Yeah, an optional dialogue.
What if it was, if you were going to make a mission about Loris 3, what if it's something like she randomly shows up on your doorstep, says, I know we have this history, but you have to help me save the galaxy.
Yeah,
Help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. I mean, wrong
they
universe.
Could put her through an arc similar to yeah.
They
can put her
more
through an
like
arc
Darth
similar to
Maul
what
sending
Wayne 6 had.
Obi-Wan, you're only my hope. But anyway, that's just a random thought. I really need to get rid of Snap to Grid, don't I?
It helps, especially after reloading.
Yeah. So the one thing we should probably throw out is actual Foundry news.
Yes.
We have the full Cardassian uniform for Cardassians now.
Yes.
And freaking tastic.
Yeah. So that was basically the way Cryptic unlocked it for players in game seems to have carried over for the Foundry. So specifically Cardassian characters have the uniform. Other characters don't. So you can't make any other species in that uniform. We do have the plans,
does that mean we also have the ability to make like actual proper official Cardassians in the Foundry editor now?
Yep. Well, yeah, that was added in a previous update.
Yeah, it's a species option before that KDF.
Yeah, so that was automatically updated as well. So, yeah, we've got them, and yeah, I mean that's why I started using Cardassians in my latest mission. And why I've been making references to the True Way, because I'm planning on bringing just using those assets to their fullest now.
Well, I actually did use the True Way in one of my missions. It's just that I threw them into the mission as little more than like, hey, I need an army of mooks for you to kick the crap out of. So we'll just use these guys because they seem like the people who'd be happy to show up at an anthropological dig and try to shoot things up.
Yeah, I've referenced them too. They were the weapon suppliers in one of my previous missions. But I didn't actually bring them into the main plot in any significant way.
To be honest, I kind of like was channeling the whole Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom thing when I wrote that mission, and the True Way got thrown into the mission to take the role of the Nazis.
Because Indiana Jones is best when he's fighting Nazis.
Cardassian option, we do have also all the parts. So yeah, I mean
True Way is kind of Nazis.
Yeah, they're pretty xenophobic, and they're about reestablishing the old military order for the Cardassians, and that's
I'm sure there's some parallels between the occupation and the Holocaust.
These guys are like Nazi holdouts, 50 years later.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's an angle I'm going to be exploring. But it's it's sort of nice just to see that this isn't going to something that Cryptic has to pay too much attention to, such that we need to keep bothering Cal. Hey, can we have Cardassians? Hey, can we have Cardassians? We've got Cardassians.
We've got Cardassians.
Cardassians.
Cardassians or Cardassians. I mean,
I don't know if you have my. Do you have my screen up on the stream?
Yes.
Lagoon? Okay. Bleachers. Da, 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 da. This whole thing is going to be meant to, I think, to be seen from the field rather than up in the stands, as far as players go. So I'm not necessarily going to build it to really make 100% sense.
That's fine. I mean, I've got the colony around my baseball diamond, which I'm going to wall off. They're just not really meant to be run around.
I was actually kind of noticing that I kept seeing two different baseball stadiums that looked radically different. And also, one of you is using a Bensite Foundry character, and the other one is using either a Cation or a Phrasen.
Yeah, my Foundry character is a Cation because I need to make sure that do my best to make maps that Mark can't get out of.
Basically. we know you too well.
have I ever told you how one of my favorite things to do in the winter event is to snipe the army of snowmen by climbing up so high on the mountain next to them that I'm out of their weapons range? I'm pretty sure whoever built that map didn't want me to be standing there, but too bad.
Like, do you like that matters to you, right?
All right.
Yeah.
I do have to kind of watch this because I'm using building assets for this little part here, so to make sure I don't use too many.
Yep.
I want to set this back a ways.
And
Are you
moving on
using
with
building
the news.
assets or
yeah. But building
detail
just
assets?
reminded me of a part of what I was getting
Foundations.
at with that whole discussion of whether or not they actually had an intact genetic sample from Kalis, is that it's entirely possible that they had to, shall we say, do what Jurassic Park did and fill in some gaps in the genetic reconstruction, and that no one actually has any idea what Kalis is supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for the record, if you're trying to line up those TOS orange grates, the big ones, the big frameless ones, you need to offset each of them by 5.35.
Good to know.
That is what I've been trying to derive this past like 15 minutes.
Well, see, that's you remember how in one of my missions I made a floor by taking a bunch of those science crates and tiling them? That's exactly what I did. Is I put two of them next to each other and then adjusted them to get them to line up perfectly, and then I looked in the editor to see the distance between the two, and then just replicated that distance.
Yeah, and it's tedious to dial these things in, but once you do, all you got to do is pull up a calculator, start adding your values, and you can line up all of your bits.
253.5 plus 3.5 plus 3.5 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all know how
then
that
you just
goes.
plug the numbers into the Foundry.
This is going to be tedious. I'm working on this basically the next map, which is the exterior of the. The exterior of the. I might have to restart this build. Yeah. Delete. Yeah, it's just working through a few things, and it's like, how best to convey this? And it's like, well, the base map I'm using, I was trying to go for something a little bit new, but it's like, well, the asset I'm using has turrets, and that's not what I want for the Inaro.
Ooh, I just thought of something that I would like to see the devs give us from Star Trek Discovery. That would be the Terran Emperor's personal color guard uniform.
I know that Discovery Mirror Universe stuff is something that they very much want to do.
Yep, and they've been shouting like, yeah, we want it too, guys. We saw it the same time you did. So
I don't think players realize how
how
far in advance things have to be planned out.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that ship, I could so totally visualize them throwing that thing into a lockbox. Oh my goodness!
It's way too big.
Wait,
but
hold on.
They might put it in a queue or something.
I discovered something.
What's that?
Okay, so if you go into the Foundry, well, no. Actually,
and then you discovered something.
This is not about Discovery, but this is relevant to baseball. I'm looking through the floaters. I just looked through the back options on one of the characters I'm working with. I've got floater, metallic, floater, gradient, floater, logicians, and floater niners. They haven't talked about
Hello. That was not mentioned in the notifications, but wait, they did give us like a vague cryptic mention that they had added another set of floaters to the game. They didn't mention what they were.
Yeah, so it looks like they might just not have the art, because these aren't. Let me just take a look at them.
Do they not work yet, basically?
Well, it's a standard floater. I mean, oh wait, no, there's a logo on it. Yeah, it's just a very small logo. So,
Team jerseys, but for floaters, huh?
Nothing like huge, and I mean the floaters we have in the Foundry aren't hooked up with the color options that they have in the main game. Yeah, so just small detail logo and different color options. So that's what it looks like. Because
But,
so that
we now have to mark this as a Risa spoiler now. Oh
yep,
well.
Right. But I mean, yeah, it's sometimes the stuff comes up, but yeah, we have confirmed that there is stuff coming for Risa on Tuesday.
Well, I mean, this, like I said, this is something that they'd mentioned that by category, but they hadn't given us the details of what it was yet.
Yeah, so that's just something for players to look into. The one thing I also did want to bring up on the show, there's actually a couple more things before we get going here, but the 4-inch 3D printed models have started to show up.
Yeah.
Yes. Hang on. Let me pull up the shot that you sent me.
Because, yeah, I did get my patrol escort.
And it said mine was in the printing phase. It was a little vague about that, but...
Yeah, that's what I saw like a few days... Like, I had checked the website like last week, and that's what it had said. And I just thought that was like, okay, well, it's in the printing phase as in, like, I've ordered it and the order's been received. I didn't anticipate that meant, like, they were working on it. So, yeah, those have started to show up. And specifically the 4-inch ones, I haven't... So that's my patrol escort, the Yosef Asimov. The one thing that I haven't brought over to the Foundry yet. But the 4-inch models have shown up. I've seen a few people get those on Twitter. Or Twitter and Reddit and forums have started posting their shots of it. I haven't seen anything for the 7 and the 12-inch ones in this new style, but the 4-inch ones have started showing. So apparently they're working through that, and these are arriving a lot sooner than expected because they said September for me originally.
Yeah. I would say the coolest one I've seen so far has got to be the Mirror Temporal Destroyer.
I haven't seen that one yet.
It was on Reddit, like yesterday or something.
Okay.
Oh, you mean Lita's flagship?
No, the Temporal Destroyer.
Yeah.
The Mobius.
So it's the... Yeah.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be
that kind of looked like the Wells, but sort of, evil and spiky.
Yeah, that's good.
One of the guys said he thought it maybe helped because it was a very solid ship. There's not a lot of, small pieces.
Yeah.
Did you see Thomas's reaction when I was in one of the live streams and asked if we were ever going to be able to 3D print the bombs?
Yeah, no.
So when you figure out how to magically make the pieces float, then we can do it.
To be honest, if I was going to make it, I would use transparent plastic to fill in the gaps. It's just that even then, it takes a bit of tinkering to figure out where to put the transparent plastic.
Yeah, and getting a transparent plastic that you can 3D print in conjunction with plastic that you're not able to, that's transparent.
Yeah,
it seems like it would be easiest to actually just print the components and then assemble it with glue.
Yeah, that might be a little more complicated than they're prepared to go.
Yeah, and getting that to a process where they can basically... Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, probably not. But the...
I mentioned it on the live stream as a joke, just to see what they'd say. Oh well. One thing that I found kind of amusing is that apparently Kale doesn't know what the bomb is.
I mean,
the onomatopoeia doesn't give it away.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to suggest to Drogan here.
Mm-hmm.
What about taking two of those objects, two of those mounts, rotating them and putting them together?
Ah, that's an idea.
Ooh, yes.
Because I didn't really like how that one was turning out.
Yeah, because it had too much.
It doesn't change the height; it just changes the shape a lot.
Yeah, you might.
It makes it a little more solid.
Yeah.
It makes it more rounded. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And you can kind of keep doing that too, just to create more of that solid surface. But yeah, I'm just speaking to the patrol escort I got. It's really nice. So, I mean, it's not quite to the point where you can read the registry, but it's very, like, they put a lot of detail in. Like, they've inked in or colored in the hull like the hull creases, the windows. The nacelle seems spot on. So it's such, I mean, it's just nice. It's sort of just that nice balance of, it's not like vague or blobby or anything like that. It's nice, crisp, and I highly recommend the 4-inch ships because they did a fantastic job with these guys, and they're also pretty flexible too. So you don't like worry about breaking it if you're holding it. So I mean, these things, I wouldn't like to drop it on a hard surface, but if it went down, I wouldn't be like, I'd be concerned. I wouldn't like have a panic.
You
right
don't
away.
feel the need to treat it like it's made out of broken eggshells.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's made out of glass or just like a really, just.
I
rigid
think you had
plastic.
mentioned that it didn't feel brittle. It felt like it was sort of, you could bend it and it'd be fine.
Yeah, and that has a drawback. I think specifically, I've seen one print that didn't turn out quite so well, and that was a refit Constitution class, because those pylons are really thin and they're at a weird angle and they have a really narrow point of connection. So, big caution if you want to. Yeah, I mean, it was sort of like they're bending back, and that's because it's a flexible plastic, and they just had this really weak point of articulation or point of connection.
I used to have that problem with micro machines back in the day when they did Star Trek.
Yeah, and these are
if
probably
anyone
more.
remembers those.
Oh yeah, I mean that's my point of comparison here. They are kind of a little bit more. They're more flexible than that. So and a little bit. Mine's a little bit heavier, so I don't know if it's necessarily denser. It kind of feels that per item. So it's not quite that, but I kind of like it better than that. I don't know. The feel is just perfect, especially with just how precise this is to the game. It is disorienting now to come back to playing with the ship and stow, because I brought that right back up because it was tier 5U, and it's like, well, I've been playing with that for a while.
I did all tier 5U.
I did find this is probably the most successful ship I found for taking out Herc. Because I mean, the tail gun, but at the same time the forward firepower with the Nadion bombs, because you have that duality where you have those really tough Herc ships that are just launching the fighters off, and then you have the swarmers themselves. So it is the best escort I found. It's a lot better than the pilot escort that I was using. Even though that can reposition itself and it's got more forward firepower, and it was also using Mark 15 weapons on that. So yeah,
have I mentioned recently just how much loved tricobalt bombing and how much the Herc hated?
This is like that, but I can keep doing it because I'm not using a tricobalt torpedo. I'm using the Undine Reputation torpedo with a high yield, and then I'm also doing the trick where you do that, and then you've also got overwhelming force as the one of the mastery traits on. So anything that's hit by that radiation, it gets hit by technically hit by that high yield torpedo. So everything does a photonic shockwave. So it's basically like, it's kind of the opposite of what you do is like bring everything together. No, I'm going to blast everything apart. So now it's diffuse and less concentrated. So.
Well, one thing that I've I'm not sure how many acts I managed to get to clustered like this, but use eject warp plasma when you have a bunch of the swarmers chasing you to temporarily immobilize them. Then as they're temporarily immobilized, then you do your trike bombing, and all of them are basically at point blank range when the tricobalt mines explode.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to
I've had
see.
good luck with the whatever the console name is that's off the Regent, the T5 Sovereign. Update. It's the Riker maneuver from
It's the Metreon gas canister.
Metreon gas, and then it explodes.
There was also
if you can catch a whole bunch of the swarmers in it, it's fantastic.
There was also that one trait from the Oh, what was it? It was just like the bows. Yeah, it was like one of the earlier First Contact Day events. It still hasn't made its way to the Phoenix box, but it added a radiation pulse to evasive maneuvers that just went directly behind you.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that's also another just like I'm gonna just hit the swarmers a little bit. Probably a little bit more useful for the the heavier scenarios like the boss stage of the battle zone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just going back to it. Like the Herc just sort of force you to do things a little bit differently, and it is nice to kind of go back to those other options because it's like
one thing that I actually seriously considered with the Iconians, but never really like got into, was the possibility of countering the fact that their guys like to fly up behind you by using dispersal pattern alpha with mines. Because no one ever bothers with dispersal pattern alpha because of the fact that it scatters the mines across the battlefield as you move. However, if the enemy isn't holding still, then having the mines clustered in one spot isn't useful.
Speaking of which, what did you guys think of the announced new Rise chip? With its
the
3.5.
The
I've been
3.5.
wanting one for years, just because it doesn't exist yet. That is the main reason, and I still like it.
It's something different, and yeah, I like it for that same reason. Where it's just like it's not the usual thing.
Hey, I haven't seen one of these before.
Yeah, it's the novelty. Yeah, it's some people. It as the forums
also
are.
With as many 360 weapons as we have in the game, I mean, forward firepower is not actually something I would personally consider to be a significant drawback to this.
Yeah, it's
well, we
one
can
of those
only
things
do.
where
We're still limited to 2 Omnis plus the
two
kinetic cutting
Omnis.
beam.
Well, kinetic cutting beam, 2 omnidirectional energy beams.
If you're using
but there's certain other options that you can use. And also, seriously, if you put all 3 of those in the back, that means you have only 2 weapons that are locked to rear facing. So, I mean, that's 6 weapons firing forwards.
Yeah, I mean, it's the 2 weapons locked to rear facing. You're probably going to be sticking mines in them. So it's one of those.
Torpedo. I love firing torpedo spreads at things that chase me.
Yeah, I mean that's another option too, but it's one of those things where you're gonna have to build the ship a little bit differently, which I like. I mean, it's like
I got into that habit,
but
with the crystalline entity because the shards chase you in much the same way.
Yeah, the one thing I was thinking about doing was putting the 3 omni beams in the front, and then 5 beam arrays in the back for a ship that I'm supposed to be flying backwards. Combat. Just as something, just like I'm gonna make this work because I can call it a certain thing, which I probably don't want to repeat on the stream here. But yeah, the butt backwards build.
Well, on Twitter we were calling it the Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just different, and I'm like, let's go for it. If it works, it works. If it
ran the way,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the mindset that every ship has to be this very narrowly focused thing around whatever the current meta is.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't
else...
play to that, yeah, and especially with the fact that we've got specializations, we've got the 3 professions to play around with still. There's a lot of ways you can vary ship up. This is one of them, and props to Cryptic for really going outside the box with this one, because it could have easily been a 5-3 or 4-4. And
one of the coolest story mission rewards in Delta Rising is the tricobalt bombing on a stick device. That is.
I fought that on a shuttle before, and that was quite interesting for one of the events. Yeah, so yeah, that chip is coming in. Yeah, it's the remaining Vorgon cruiser that we've had in the Foundry for a couple of years now. So yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. And again, it's just something different. The one last thing I did want to give a shout out for is that Legion of Myth is doing a big giveaway probably next Thursday for their STO Foundry stream, where they're just going to be giving away a whole mess of prizes. So tier 5 ships, maybe more. I was talking with Heathendog about it, but they've definitely got tier 5 ships, lots of gear, lots of swag, and it's just all stuff they've got a giveaway bot in the stream to participate with, and yeah, I mean, that's just going to be something they're going to be putting together as sort of like a big fat, like not like a super special event, although it'll be right after the 4th of July, but just as just something fun to do for the summer. So those guys are going to be running that. So it's again next Thursday, I think at 8 o'clock Central.
And that would be the 5th? No.
Yeah, the 5th.
Yeah, the 5th.
So that'll be the 5th. And again, it's just a lot of prizes. You show up in chat. They'll be playing Foundry missions. I might try to 8 o'clock Central.
Okay, so 7
9
Eastern, 9 Pacific.
Along those lines, actually, today, Priority 1 is doing obviously this is for our people in the live chat room. Today, Priority 1 is doing a 12-hour live stream, and they're doing, prizes and playing the game and blah, blah, blah. And they will be going for at least a couple more hours after we're done here.
Yeah.
What are they live streaming?
STO.
Okay, I didn't know if they anything in particular in STO.
I'm not sure. I think they've been playing missions and doing queues and that sort of stuff.
Party 1 does pick and mix with their stream, so they're just play zones, play episodes, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Obviously, Priority 1's been around for many years, and Greendragoon and I have had the opportunity to meet some of them in person, in fact.
Yeah, we got
nice guys.
Definitely.
But I was going to say though,
I've been working on the backstop, or the behind home plate bleachers, which is definitely some good seats if you ever have the opportunity to attend a baseball game. Sit behind home plate; it's excellent.
Yeah, I've been the last few baseball games I went to, I was in left field, not left field, second deck, probably around third base, around that point, or a little bit further than that. Kind of weird, because it's like I'm kind of sitting in the same place each time. These were all White Sox games. Yeah.
White Sox, not the Cubs?
No, not the Cubs. I don't know. It just sort of White Sox kind of like when I was me and my brother were a little bit more into baseball. They were sort of, this was back in 2005, so when they actually won the World Series. It was just like back then, it was just sort of the baseball team you get into because you're interested in baseball, whereas Cubs, you get into it because you want to go to a social event. I mean, there were more direct ways of putting that parody, but it kind of like, it just got like White Sox was just a little bit easier to get down to. The team was a little bit more on target, and this was still back in when this is going to be the year for the Cubs, and they really weren't doing well in the stretch.
Yeah, and all the time I lived in Chicago, I never attended a baseball game there.
White Sox is pretty good. I mean, the surrounding neighborhood is not somewhere you want to spend a whole lot of time, but I mean, it's perfectly fine. Yeah, I mean, this is deep South Side, but but it's right next to the highway. It's pretty easy to get in and out, and the stadium itself is it's pretty nice. The nicest sporting event I went to around here was a Bulls game because I was in family got access to the specialty seats, so not like the full like you're in a box, but I mean we had a menu.
Nice.
But the funnest one was a Wolves game. Those are insane because they've got
hockey.
Yeah, and they've got flamethrowers.
Yeah,
I mean, they bring those out to the center of the ice, and you can feel them way in the back.
I have been to a couple of Phoenix Coyotes games. Long time ago. It was fun. I'm not that much into hockey. I'm sure my Canadian friends will crucify me about that, but
Yeah, it's similar. It's when you're watching it, it's similar in broad strokes to the type of action that you see in soccer, but just sped up a lot more.
and with sticks
And with sticks. And
on ice.
yeah, so it's kind of like mixing a little bit of baseball with that because you're basically going for the shots with a implement. So it feels a little bit more precise than soccer, where I mean you're kicking it, but I don't know. I mean, it's a different dynamic, or it's a different dynamic, but in a similar theme. So yeah, that's hockey. Maybe we get that for the winter event this year.
I live in Indiana, which
Triple
lacks both a baseball team or a hockey team.
Oh, but you got the Indianapolis 500.
We do have the 500.
Well, I mean, for baseball, you could always just root for the Cubs. I mean, they live like 5 miles outside Indiana.
He is closest to the White Sox. This is what happens always. Like when I was down in Champaign, Illinois, doing my undergrad, the two primary teams there were the Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals, despite the fact that the White Sox were closer to Champaign than both of those teams. And it's just cultural dynamics. You have people who are a little bit more getting into it for the relaxation, and the White Sox just didn't stand out.
But when I lived in Chicago, I was closer to the Cubs.
Ah.
Tell you a funny thing about where I live is that Kansas technically doesn't have a pro baseball or football team either, because the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals all play on the Missouri side of Kansas City.
Yep.
Which is
well,
the bigger city.
Part of the reason why I mentioned the Cubs is simply because of the fact that I used to live in Portage, Indiana, and as you observed, Indiana doesn't really have its own major league sports. It's just that Portage
we got basketball
is so
and now
close
football.
to Chicago that it's literally like a 20-minute drive. So
yeah, Indiana's big into basketball, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's huge.
Hell yeah.
Got the Pacers.
Basketball, not the other ones.
Of course.
And
Well, we got football now, so
tuning in for Foundry.
I'm originally from Colorado, of course, so we have the Broncos, which everybody knows. I grew up during the John Elway era, so that was it was interesting because obviously this big famous quarterback, but then for a long time they didn't really win anything, and then they changed their uniforms and modernized it and abruptly won 2 Super Bowls.
it's all in their head.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And then Elway had the good sense to retire immediately.
I never thought I'd live to see the day when we would get on a tangent that involved professional sports.
For a long tangent too, covering a lot of it. I was going to say, for those tuning
Well, it's
in,
because there's some professional sports appearing in STO in some capacity. So
yeah. We can now talk about the sports ball.
Exactly.
Oh, it'll be good when we can
how
talk
about them Cowboys.
It'll be good when we can talk about the sporty, drivey stuff. Like next year, they do something that's IndyCar themed for reasons.
Well, we got the shuttle race.
Yeah,
We got the shuttle race. I mean,
it'd be fun if they could somehow introduce a kind of like a PvP shuttle race.
Yeah. I mean, they could do it as
it'd be even. You'd have to. I mean, the mechanics difficulties would be even worse than the PvP race we have on ice. So
yeah, I think you could do it something similar to the the competitive PvE where it's 2 teams and you're competing on separate lines. They could make it something like that where you have to it's part of it's a race, but also as part of it's completing challenges as a group. That might work out a little bit better as a sort of just a weekend PvE event.
Mm-hmm.
But then of course, though, the format isn't so much similar to IndyCar as it is F1 because it's just everyone bring your own manufacturer shuttle.
Well, I mean, and the I'm going to have to cut this short, gentlemen, as I got a storm moving in.
That's okay. We're actually just about to our time.
Yeah, they're about.
I'm going to have to leave you. And if, Dragoon, if you could put up our contact information and sign us off, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. And let's say try and you and I both publish these so people can check them out.
Definitely.
All right.
And if you add, just
ahead.
one last thing, if you add miscellaneous optional dialogue, that would also help make these potentially spotlightable. Sort of like the Starbase Invictus social zone. Just a little bit of stuff going on.
Okay, I'll think about it. All right. So if you want to reach us, we can be reached by email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at foundryroundtab. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Duncan can be reached at Gorgonups_SSF. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman. And I, of course, can be reached at Greendragoon.
I think we lost Drogan, so I think with that we can say goodnight.
Good night.